case of smart cities where the French government or the German governments are dealing straight away with our urban local bodies in terms of projects and city plan and design and things like that. But today, I think that would be for some other day. Today, I think we need to focus on one more component of this overall development finance space, which is the private financing. I think that is an important forming an important component, and taking a cue from what the earlier speakers were talking about. I think within this space, if you look at the current development trajectory that we have and the kind of financing that is required, it's almost envisaged that out of 100 rupees, 20 to 25 will come from the private sector. In terms of public-private partnerships, in terms of the new plan that we have from the central government, which is the National Asset Monetization Plan. So things like that will contribute a lot to the overall development plan that we have. So for example, the National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is one of the flagship schemes of this government, for 5 years, 2020 to 2025, it has a plan of around 111 lakh crores. There, the government envisages that around 21 to 24% will come from the private sector. And so in US dollar terms, that is around $1.5 trillion, 111 lakh crores. So 20% of that is somewhere around $25 billion. So that is supposed to come from the private sector through PPPs, through investments. And yeah, I think a lot of the other important thing is that a lot of new investment mechanisms are coming up. So earlier we just had a model called the public-private partnerships, but of late we are seeing various offshoots of that. So recently there's one under which the road projects are being privatized. It's called the hybrid annuity model. So, I mean, earlier in PPP, there was a toll kind of a concession where the government gives the concession to a private company and it collects toll and generates revenue and makes it profit. But here in the hybrid annuity kind of a model, the government will pay upfront to the private company, and then that will be subsidized from the toll that is collected. So the upfront payment will be a guarantee to the private operator to continue operating the project. So hybrid annuity model is one. Now we are seeing more innovative mechanisms like InvIT, which is called the Infrastructure Investment Trust, quite highly publicized in this year's budget. Yes, which is the Real Estate Investment Trust. So, I mean, these are the kind of mechanisms where now, so in InvIT or a REIT, a retail investor can directly invest into the infrastructure project. So it's not that you go through a exchange traded fund or a mutual fund to invest into, through a fund manager to invest into a infrastructure project. You can directly as a retail investor go into these projects. So I mean, these are the kind of things that are happening in this kind of a space. But taking a step back, I think, and it's important to make link with the with especially the World Bank in terms of private financing, because maybe 5-7 years ago, that's the way they are trying to model this approach and strategize this whole thing through the kind of sloganeering that they gave. One was called billions to trillions. So, I mean, realizing and saying that, MDBs won't be able to fund all the kind of infrastructure that is needed to, provide whatever water, sanitation, sewage, electricity, transport to all the people around the world, considering the SDG goals. So that's the reason we need to mobilize private finance to get into this space for these kind of projects. So billions to trillions was one kind of call they made, and then later on, moving on from that, they again came up with something else in 2018 that was called maximizing finance for development, again trying to woo in private investors into the development space to fund development projects. Uh, so, I mean, that's the kind of approach that we are seeing. And of course, when it comes from the World Bank, the national governments absorb these kind of ideas very quickly, and they try to push it through their systems and try to implement them in their domestic spaces, not just in terms of projects, but also creating enabling that are required. So that is there. If we, I think, in as part of CFA's work, we've been doing this work fairly recently, a couple of years. So there's still a lot of gaps that we need to create our understanding on, but we have a fair idea in terms of what is happening. So in terms of the landscape and who's operating within that, I think we have multiple players. There are sovereign wealth funds which are now into the country investing into different projects. There are pension funds from different countries who are investing. As I mentioned, infrastructure funds are there. Exchange traded funds are coming up, which are the new kind of mechanism to fund these kind of projects. So multiple things are happening. In this space, we did a little work in terms of tracking some of the private investments in energy and infrastructure sector in last 5 years. A very small kind of a sample, but we just thought we'll have a look what exactly is happening. Some interesting results in terms of the companies, the funds actually who are bringing in money, the countries where this money is originating. So most of the money is coming from Saudi Arabia, Canada, US, Singapore, these kind of locations. And saying, so in terms of oil and gas, I mean, in our kind of research, it shows that oil and gas is at a very high priority in terms of getting investment. But that's actually a skewed data, because Saudi Aramco invested a huge amount into Reliance Industries. So that shows that, the oil and gas has received a lot of. Similarly, the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia invested a lot of money into Reliance Jio and other platforms. So, I mean, that is the kind of institutional investments that we are seeing. And then major private investment firms like Brookfield, Blackstone. In terms of pension funds, we have the Canada Pension Fund, Pension Plan Investment Board. Interestingly, of course, beyond Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, Abu Dhabi Investment Authority and Qatar Investment Authority are also very highly invested in India. So a lot of projects they are bringing money in. As I said earlier, a lot of policies which we are changing across the country to attract, enable these investments, and also programs like the National Infrastructure Pipeline, National Monetization Pipeline, the Gati Shakti Mission. All these are, trying to build those spaces. But definitely, researching, analyzing, trying to understand the space is complex. Because of course the data is really not accessible behind paywalls. Information is not really easily available. I think what we tried to do is just scan through 5 years of news reports, editorials, and things like that. So this is a kind of sketchy information that is available from this kind. And then on top of that, uh, very difficult to get confidential contract information. Those kind of things are highly secretive, so it's very difficult to uh, uh, get access to those things. And of course, that would most likely be in English. I don't think that would be available in any local language. So I mean, more difficult for local people to understand.